Good morning, good afternoon. Great to have everybody join us today. And you've probably seen with Sammy over the past year or so, we've had a couple of AI sessions. And it's not as if we're turning around and jumping on the bandwagon with everything else. We actually believe it's a fairly significant thing, not only in our profession as sales and marketing people, but also across the board. And with it, there were great opportunities, and there were also some scary things happening. And specifically, today we're talking about the customer journey. I think everybody on this call has probably been through a journey mapping exercise and everything else. So as we started looking at the customer journey, there was only one person who stood out, and that's Jeff Ernst. Jeff Ernst is probably one of the best guys, voice of the customer, when it comes to really understanding, the journey from prospect to advocate. But during a conversation with Jeff, and I'll have Jeff introduce himself in a little bit because I can't give him the justice that he deserves. During our conversation with Jeff, things have changed dramatically. And a lot of the stuff that we hear about with respect to the journey is from the company viewpoint. The reality is your prospects now are using AI in very, very powerful ways. In fact, if you're not in the C-suite, the folks in the C-suite are probably looking at your particular journey separately. So there's no choice. But the challenge that we have from a journey perspective is that with prospects using AI to evaluate your company, there are some distinct challenges. And Jeff is going to walk through that today. So this is an interactive session. For those who haven't been on here before, we'll be monitoring the chat. We'll have questions at the end, but we oftentimes take questions in the middle. And Jeff is going to be also talking, stopping and asking some questions along the way. So by all means, jump in. If you haven't been on a Sammy session before, we're very unfiltered. Keep the questions, spot on, and don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. We're here. Your time is valuable. So Jeff, without further ado, I want to turn it over to you, and I'll have you introduce yourself and talk about how you got here.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you for that, Rob. And I actually have you beat. Not only am I a recovering CMO and sales and marketing leader, I'm also a recovering industry analyst. And so I will, that's actually part of what's going to inform our discussion today. And please let me know if you can't see my screen that I just started sharing.
Looks great.
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about the flip side of AI, the opposite side of what all of us have been focused on for the last year since the launch of ChatGPT. And so just to talk a little bit about my background. So as I said, both a marketing practitioner, I've been a proud member of SAMI since about 2016, I think. I did a session on buyer behavior for SAMI back in 2018, which was very well received at one of our breakfasts in Newton. And also wanted to just welcome all of the Any Excuse members here. I've been a part of that group for 25 years, and I'm currently one of the co-leaders of that group. So welcome to them. But yeah, just to let you know what's informing my research, just so you know that this, or my points of view anyway, so you know that it's not just coming out of thin air. I was a principal analyst at Forrester after about 20 years of being a serial CMO, where I did a ton of customer interviews on behalf of our clients, really focused on customer satisfaction and really focused on framing customer engagement strategies that can drive customers and drive customer-led growth. And I coined that term at Forrester, customer-led growth, and created a whole workshop. In addition, that's where my buyer interest began, because we did annual technology buyer surveys. And I've been fascinated by that ever since. And so after Forrester, as I was starting up Slap5, my software company, I did a lot of work with Buyer Persona Institute as a senior researcher and did over 1,000 technology buyer interviews across all different categories. This was fascinating. It changed my whole view of marketing and how marketing should be done. And then I've continued that because in parallel with being the founder and CEO of Slap5, which is a customer marketing and advocacy software company, I'm also the founder and research director of Voice Advice, which is a voice of the customer and voice of the buyer firm, where I've continued my passion, where we do a ton of customer interviews for creating case studies in a format that is going to be well received and found by AI. And I've added to that in the last year a lot of research on how buyers are using AI bots in the buying cycle. I mean, it's just a natural fit for my insanely curious interest in buyers. And so here's what I want to cover today. And I apologize, this is probably going to be a little more slide heavy than usual for a SAMI session, but this topic is very visual. And so I think there's a good need for a lot of slides. And so, but I'll be going through quickly. But what I wanted to start first is just asking people here a question to see how have you used ChatGPT or other bots in your sales and marketing role? And if people want to either, I think we're probably small enough if you want to just say something, or just in the chat, or Rob and Pam, if you have a preference. I should have asked earlier, but does anybody want to just share an example or two of how you've used an AI bot in your sales and marketing?
Feel free to just jump in, folks.
Blog writing, yes, great one.
Yeah, and there's a few things in the chat.
Yep.
I'll go writing email cadences, writing sales outreach, writing website content, and I developed a new service in ChatGPT.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah,
perfect use
Jeff,
cases.
and when I've been analyzing customer requirements, oftentimes I'll use a combination of Bard, ChatGPT, and Claude to make sure I haven't missed any key points.
Yes, and I think you probably used ChatGPT, didn't you, Rob, when you were teeing me up with questions for this session, I think.
I did a combination of questions for you, and I took my questions, I fed them into GPT-4 actually,
okay,
and ended up getting a few more that I hadn't considered.
Yep.
So Jeff, this is Jim Narrow. I'm actually teaching at Southern New Hampshire University. So I use it in my teaching and preparing classes, and then I use it in my sales classes to teach students how to use it. But I did want to point out, I've used it as a buyer. I had to replace a home theater projector, and everything was getting very confusing for me. So I decided, hey, I use this in my own environment. Why don't I try it as a buyer? And I kind of shocked myself, but it worked really well.
Yep.
Yeah, Jeff, Kathy chimed in as well, looking at optimizing channels for a particular audience, which is interesting.
Yep. So Kathy, I assume that means are you asking like what types of channels does a certain type of person use, and starting a conversation around that? That would be my assumption, but she can correct me if she wants.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute. Yes, exactly. That's
okay.
Exactly what I was doing.
All right. And Dave says recruiting. Oh, interesting. Dave, what might be an example of a question you would ask for recruiting purposes, or a conversation you might have?
It helped me create a job description for a salesperson, for instance, or for a marketing person.
So generating job descriptions. Okay, this is great. Comparing competitors. Yes, I love that. Another great use case. So let me just jump in and talk
Can I add
about
one more?
Oh yeah, go ahead. No, absolutely.
It's David Cutler. Hi, I'm driving. From the other side, large language model development for chief compliance officers at banks, which gets really hairy because it's all about using the private version, but having public access that's risk averse, because when you're at a bank and you're looking at compliance regulations, things have to be really tight. But what the idea is, if you have 200 people in a compliance department looking at all the different regulations, the metrics are you need 2 to build a large language model for individual departments. And that's a hell of a metric change. So we're in kind of it almost becomes HR in that way. But right now it's really just taking advantage of better analysis of banking requirements and investment opportunities. So that's the exciting part. But the reality ends up becoming we're saving them millions of dollars on employees, and it's not just throwing them out for the robots. The mindset has been very much, how do you get those other people in that department to actually be more customer centric, and those scientists aren't. So it's kind of an interesting HR kind of reality.
Oh, great, awesome. Yeah. All right, so just for sales and marketing leaders here, I mean, ChatGPT has changed everything. There's no doubt, right? I've never seen anything so rapidly adopted by sales and marketing as ChatGPT. And just look what's happened since it was launched in November 2022. No technology has ever evolved as quickly. This is just the major developments in the first 6 months. since it was launched. And that's one of my predictions is it's going to change way faster than search engines change their algorithms. And so it's something we absolutely have to be taking into account, not only from the customer, the content generation side, but also from the buyer behavior side. And so this is my observation of what's happened in the last year and 2 months since it was launched. The sales and marketing world went crazy about using it to generate content, whether it's the sales messaging, website messaging, blog posts. And so that's really where the crowd went, and with a lot of good reason, to the point where I was telling Rob and Pam earlier that I was at the Inbound conference. I don't know if anybody went this year, but I was there, and I think it was in September. And every single session I went for the whole day I was there was just people talking about how they use AI to write sales messaging and giving advice on how to use AI to write sales messaging. And they might as well rename Inbound to AI for Sales Messaging Conference or something. I mean, it was so obsessed with that. And so I decided, being the usual myself, who never takes the road less taken. So I decided to take the buyer behavior path. And it's less paved and less competition there, but really knew that it was going to totally change how buyers buy. And so I wanted to get out in front of that. And that's what you're going to hear today is my research over the last year and my recommendations based on that. And it's not out of left field either, because here's the type of things I've discovered over those 1,000+ buyer interviews that I've done is, and I go beyond way earlier just than when somebody starts a buying cycle, when they're actually evaluating vendors, back when they first realized that they are in pain, and that's when they're asking, the things that they're trying to decide on are, should we tackle this problem now? Is our organization ready to take on this? Is it worth it? Are there viable solutions out there? And what approaches to this problem have others done? I mean, could we get our buy-in from all of our stakeholders and executives to tackle it? And so we hardly ever talk about that in our customer stories or anything in our marketing. But that's where think of the buying cycle as really a series of non-linear questions and decisions that have to be made before people move to the next step. It's not just a single linear process, even though I try to simplify it here as one. But then they're in the process of how do I solve it? Like they want to know who's had a similar problem and what have companies just like mine done about it, and what outcomes have they achieved by doing that? Then they actually get into the actual buying process, which they're trying to find out which vendors have a viable solution and how well does each one meet our criteria and what have their customers experienced. And this is where they have all the objections, like I call them the yeah buts. Yeah, but your solution is too slow, it's too expensive, it's too proprietary, it's too focused on the large enterprise market, and I'm a mid-market company. So, and then there's the things that they have when they're a customer. They want to understand what obstacles they're going to hit, and then how do we make sure people are going to adopt this. So there's a reason I'm sharing this, because there's not a huge difference in what people are asking ChatGPT, not surprisingly, but and I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. But I just wanted to set the stage to, so because I'm not coming out of left field when I'm doing this, but there's still the insanity still exists. SAMI stands for Sales and Marketing Innovators, obviously. There's another possible definition of SAMI, which is the Sales and Marketing Insanity, which this has bugged me forever, which is if you look at, based on that, based on these questions that I showed you earlier about what buyers have, the major questions they have as they go through their entire problem-solving cycle, what we're doing as sales and marketing people is we are ignoring the fact that what buyers want is, 85% of the questions that they're asking or need to answer before they can move to the next step of their problem-solving process are best answered in the customer voice versus company. What they want in the company voice are feeds and speeds and pricing, right? But what we give them is 98% of the content that we put out there is in the company's voice. Very, very little is in the customer voice. So that's a huge disconnect that's going to come back to bite us even more in the age of AI, with buyers using AI, which you're going to see in just a minute. And then before I jump into that part of it, though, just like I said, unprecedented adoption, fastest time to 100 million users, 2 months. I mean, that's astounding. Look, Facebook took 4.5 years. Just so the adoption is here. There's absolutely no doubt. And then also just look at the visits, how it's just 2023, the visits to a bot site. This is actually specific to ChatGPT, but 1.7 billion monthly visits, and you got to know that there's a lot of buyers out there using it for that purpose. And then also, as I'm going to be talking about the importance of embracing it on the buyer side and getting your content out and found by the chatbots, sometimes some of the objections I've gotten from people is, yeah, but the data is stale. It's 14 months behind with GPT 3.5, but look at GPT 4 didn't, it was still behind, but now if you look at GPT 4 Turbo, it's only 6 months behind. And my prediction is that the large language models and the AI bots, they're going to be close to real time. They're going to get way down to having almost real time training on the content that's out there. And so it's going to be even more important than ever that your content is out there, but it has to be out there in the right formats. And so what it means then for this buyer behavior is people now prefer to ask rather than search. Okay, think about that. They now prefer to ask a human question rather than search. It's more natural for us. And when they're asking, they're not just asking a question and looking for search results of websites they can visit that answer that question. They're looking for the answer to be provided to them, handed to them. That's the expectation that's being set by ChatGPT. And so they're also expecting it to be the start of a conversation. So the question that they're asking is starting a conversation with the bot.
So Jeff,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is actually a huge point, because even for me, I think we're in a situation now, don't make me think. And when I get search results, oftentimes that the search results, people have optimized for search engines, and the search results suck, and they're basically interspersed with a bunch of ads, and that search is becoming effectively useless in many respects. Whereas with the LLMs, suddenly I'm getting much more relevant information, and you're seeing that with all the research you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. And the time on the site for search is like seconds, right? But the time on site for ChatGPT, I should have put that stat up there too. It's like 7.5 minutes. And so people aren't just asking a single question. They're starting a conversation, and then they're asking for more details. That's the huge opportunity and threat for marketing. It's the same issue as a threat and an opportunity. And so, and marketing and sales. And so, look, what are the big platform players doing? They're scrambling like heck, right, with their engines to play here, and because they know that they need to be answering questions rather than just finding the right search engine results to be showing on a list, and then hope you find what you are looking for, right? And so huge implications. And so what does it mean for brands and for marketers? It really means that the more mentions you have, and not just mentions, but the more mentions that are relevant to what people are asking, the more AI bots will include your brand in the conversation. The more it will, and I'm going to say quotes, recommend your brand. But when it includes your brand, it is in fact a recommendation, even if it's not saying you have to buy from these folks, right? Just a mention is going to be that they're recommending that they found a brand, they found useful content that trained their large language model that is highly relevant to this question, and it came from a conversation or content about that your brand was mentioned in, and so you need to be in the conversation in this new world of buyers using chatbots. And before I jump into, I'm going to share what my research shows the most common questions or asks that people are making of ChatGPT. But I know we had one example of this earlier, but I want to open it up again to anybody that has used ChatGPT or another bot when you've been in buying mode or problem-solving mode. Are there any other examples of questions you had? I think the earlier one was like buying a stereo system and being overwhelmed with all the options and components. That's a great example where starting a conversation and getting the answer is way better. I know I've done it. I'm going to throw one out there. When I'm trying to, I'm trying to understand Like, what do I need to do to solve a problem around, like knee pain, for example. I'm a long distance runner. And so, when I use search, I just get all kinds of sites that just say the same thing. But when I use the AI bot, I get so much better information about what should I do about my knee pain and what supplements or what's the best thing to do for it.
Yeah,
And
Jeff,
any other examples of the?
yeah, Jeff, David's asking, and this is tied to the previous slide, but it builds into this one. Isn't that how people are using search queries? David, feel free to chime in. I
Yes.
think what they're entering into the bots is different. If you enter the same query into a bot versus a search engine, you're getting radically different results. Jeff,
Correct.
thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, you're getting radically different results. You're getting the answer that's been assimilated from all the learnings of that large language model, right? Or the models behind that bot. And so you're not just getting a list of search result pages where people have gamed the system to be at the top, or they've invested in the search engine optimization to be organically at the top, or they're spending a lot of money on search ads to be at the top of the paid search. And
Yeah,
so
Jeff,
the results are very different.
aren't we making ourselves vulnerable to the bias in LLMs then?
We could be. That's a great question. And the thing about it is it possible that LLMs could have biases? Yeah, they could. But they're also improving drastically, constantly. They're being trained, and they're really no smarter than all the content that's out there that they've been trained on. But because that's what they're taking decisions on, and that's what they're being trained on. If you think about it, what is the training really doing? It's training them to be based on the context of what's been asked. What's the next natural language word or phrase or expression that follows on to that, right? And I'm oversimplifying it. I'm grossly oversimplifying it for our purposes here, but that's really what it's trying to do. So yeah, there could be bias, but that bias won't last long. It might, and it might vary, every day once these bots become real time. So nevertheless, we have to play despite the bias. But you could say search engines have a bias, right? They have a bias towards companies on organic search that spend the most money doing the technical SEO on their website, for all the indexing and all the metadata and everything, as well as those that are putting all the content out there and getting the most inbound links. Doesn't necessarily mean you're the best solution, but you're going to come up higher because you've invested in the SEO.
See,
so
Jeff,
it's not necessarily helping the buyer
so
find the best solution. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
have a very mundane example. I'm looking to replace the roof on my house.
Yep.
And so typically I would use Google to try to, get an idea of what the cost is going to be. Well, all I got in return were paid ads. And I was looking for information to do budgeting. So I said, well, forget it. I'm going to use, ChatGPT instead. And I started a conversation and I got more information. So I've kind of abandoned using search now, looking for information, because all I'm getting back are those paid ads.
Right. Yep. And you're not alone. I mean, I won't say it. I mean, again, my prediction is people aren't going to totally abandon search. I think it's going to be a combination. I think people will still go into search, but as you're going to see, and as you see today, even at the top of Google and at the top of Bing, Bing has, as you know, is Microsoft, and it's got ChatGPT embedded in DALL-E as well. But right at the top of both search engines, you can start with a search. I think, I don't know, I'm part of the beta program, but I don't know if everybody sees it or not. But in my search engines that I use, my first option is to use AI and ask it a question. And then I have to scroll down a little bit to just ask regular search.
Yeah, that's been a cornerstone of Microsoft's strategy since they invested in OpenAI. So they have had Bing search, and if you're not on any list, you can just ping them, you can get added, but fundamentally that will change. But one of the things that struck me from your graph is the actual decline of the use of ChatGPT significantly this year. And
from here,
that I think, yeah. I mean, look at January, right? So
we're in January.
That's January of 2020.
So is
three.
this change? I mean, am I not reading right to left or left to right over time?
No, this is just all of 2023. That's January 23 to November of 23.
January 20.
So we're moving right to
so
left.
we're moving up or down?
We're going up. We peaked in May, and then then we grow again in the fall, and then December I think was even higher, especially around Christmas season. I didn't.
Oh,
put it
so
in here.
you've reversed the axis. Sorry, my dyslexia.
Yeah.
You totally messed up. But
Sorry
anyway,
about that.
it sounded like you inferred that we need to optimize our search to get picked up by the AI that scrapes our content so that we are in the AI discussion. So are we like SEO optimizing now for AI?
Yes, and you're jumping ahead, but
sorry.
Is that Will? I can't see who's talking.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll be quiet now.
No, that's okay. And Will, keep me honest here. I know you're as passionate about AI as I am. I know that, and I know I know you led that session we did with Any Excuse a year ago.
Yeah, I'm trying not to talk. So
no,
give
that's
us
okay.
your brilliance.
I want you to chat, but just let me just say, don't use the word scrape. AI is not going to scrape our websites. AI is going to be trained by the content that it finds, whether it's on our website or another website. That's the big distinction here, and I'm going to get into more detail about that. Okay. Any other examples though of buying mode? I love that example of buying the roof, and when you don't want to just find a roof vendor site, you really want information about how to buy a roof. And the big takeaway here is that when you're in problem solving mode, you're not looking for vendors. You're looking for advice. You're looking for guidance. You're looking for how to. You're looking for best approaches to doing something. Like when I was looking for talking about my knee pain, I wanted to see both what are the exercises I should be doing to strengthen it, what are perhaps the supplements that are going to help lubricate my knee, what are other people doing that are long distance or ultra marathoners, what have they done to address their knee pain and things like that. So I wasn't actually looking for any particular vendor or any particular category of solution to this problem. That's a huge difference right there. People they're using this way earlier than we've traditionally marketed. We tend to market top of the funnel. To us tends to be when they've filled out a call to action form, right, to attend a webinar or request a demo. That's the buying process starts way earlier than that. All right, let me just continue, because I'm going to just now give you what my research shows are the most frequent questions asked at each of these same 4 phases I showed earlier, and you're going to see that they're not drastically different. But if you haven't done any research on how your buyers are using AI, you need to, and you need to be doing it regularly, like every quarter. And also you need to be, as when I was talking to Rob earlier this week, he mentioned, people should really be typing some of these questions into chatbots and see what gets mentioned. And so, so when they're in the early phase, one of the things they want to know is, are we alone with this problem, or do other people so how big a problem is it? How, do other companies have the problem of XYZ, and they describe the problem they're having? They want to know if are there other people encountering it, or are we unique? Then when they talk about perhaps trying to solve that problem, again, insert problem again into that blank, how are companies benefiting from addressing this or solving this problem or doing X? And then they're also asking, there's a lot of questions being asked about how are companies building a business case for this. Oftentimes, every buyer, well before they're in your funnel, has to have a business case before they can go too far down the path of even investigating possible solutions. We don't know that. We're not really dealing with them at the time that they're building that business case together. We need to be, because they're asking ChatGPT, what's the business case for solving this problem? Because they hate writing them. It's like writing an RFP, only worse. Then we get to my stage 2, right? Is how do I solve it? So they want to know, how have other companies solved the problem of XYZ? They want to know, what are the dependencies? They're not asking, are we ready for it? Because ChatGPT doesn't know if they're ready. And so they've changed that question to be, what must be in place before a company can replace their ERP system or automate their supply chain or put in really optimize or tackle a digital transformation if you want to get really meta. They might say what has to be in place for a company to be ready to do something like that. And then they also this is very similar, they want to know what outcomes have others achieved by doing this. And they're going to want to see specific names mentioned of companies did this. Great opportunity for your content to be found and taught to the language model. So yeah, such and such a company did this. They used XYZ vendor, and they succeeded in this digital transformation, if that was the problem. And then when we get into who do I choose, they want to know what vendors have the most success solving the problem of X, right? They're not just searching on a keyword like XYZ software or software for XYZ. They're asking specifically which vendors have had the most success solving this problem. Okay, they're getting right to the point. And then they also want to know what's it like implementing an XYZ solution. This is where they insert the category, right? What is it like implementing a new ERP? Or if it's in a very mature industry with a lot of legacy players and a lot of competitive replacement, they're asking what is it like moving from, and they might even, what is it like I'll use ERP again. What is it like either, migrating an ERP solution, or what is it like moving from, legacy vendor A to modern vendor B? And so they want to find out what is that like? And what are the biggest pitfalls companies encounter when adopting an XYZ? Remember, buyers are in risk mitigation mode, and their senior executives, CEOs especially, their job is to reduce risk. And so you might be out there as a buyer trying to find some solution where you're going to take a little risk and leapfrog the competition. But for you to sell that internally, you need to know all the possible risks, because then you're prepared to make the business case because nobody's going to be surprised if you hit them, or you have a mitigation strategy for if we do hit that risk. If we hit that pitfall, I should say. And then in what they're asking as well about being a customer is, what are the best alternatives to, and then insert a vendor. So this is at renewal time, right? A lot of times now, you SaaS vendors out there recognize that people are using GPT to. Was that a question? I heard a scream. Okay, no, all right. So they're asking, like, what are alternatives to the incumbent, and why? And the why is a big question there, right? So they're not automatically renewing. They're using GPT or ChatGPT to find out, are there alternatives that we should be considering? Even if they're moderately or quite happy, they might be asked, and they're always being asked now to justify the renewal. Even if they absolutely love the vendor, they might be hearing from their boss or their boss's boss to, before we renew, just see what alternatives have emerged in the last year and make sure we're not missing the boat on something that could be better or cheaper. And then how do companies get the most out of an XYZ solution? Right? This is another case where they're looking for best practices, but because they're worried about, if we continue to renew and invest in this, maybe they realized in the first year they're not getting as much value as they had hoped, and they're wondering why. And so they're actually asking, how do other companies get the most value out of an XYZ solution? And they could either insert a category name of a type of solution here or a specific vendor name here. And then they might ask, how have other companies overcome a particular obstacle to the adoption and implementation of that type of solution? So these are the questions that are being asked. To me, they're eye-opening, but hopefully not shocking. Hopefully none of these are shocking to you. I mean, hopefully that you shouldn't be too surprised that this is what's on your buyers' minds. If you are, no matter what, you need to be doing your own. And that's I'll be getting into some recommendations in just a minute here.
Yeah, Jeff, we maybe I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but there were a couple questions, two questions, excuse me, in particular, and they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. Okay. But you could probably put them both together. One's from John. He asked something that came up in a prior section. If we optimize our content for AI, how likely are we going to get attribution for that content in a bot. And he said one of his clients is shutting off AI bots to avoid having their content stolen. And then Louis asked, 180 degrees different from that, how does ChatGPT make its recommendations? Are they based on the quantity or quality of what it reviews? Namely, if 100 marketers are writing about using inbound social media, blah, 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 about the importance of customer, we want to prioritize the marketing channels that get the most buzz. So one's shutting it off, and the other's saying, "Oh, do we just end up doing a lot of stuff and end up, in the soup with everybody else?"
Yeah, and I know some people are shutting it off, and some companies are. This is a real risk of doing this. It's like shutting off Google. It's like doing no follow tags on your entire website. Like what CEO wants to have no follow tags on their entire website, right? I mean, that's going to be a problem. But again, the answer to these questions, I'm going to be giving away a lot of my recommendations because you don't want to be shutting it off, but you want to be doing it right. And it's not only about your own website either. And so I'm going to be getting into that in a minute too. But there are ways to mitigate the risk of your content being, quote, stolen. You need to be part of the conversation. In fact, let me just bring this up. This is really, the key takeaway here to lead into what we need to be doing, right? We need to shift from competing on keywords to be at the top of search engine result pages to be competing on topics to be part of and mentioned in the conversation. Okay, and so to the earlier question, my prediction here, somebody asked, is SEO going to be about large language models? Yes, I now predict that there will be a new practice area called LMO. And that might not be the exact name of it, but there is going to be some type of language model optimization practice that's going to emerge, or the SEOs are going to be smart and do it. But I can tell you, I get pinged every week by SEO firms wanting to do work for my business, and I ask them about, hey, what are you doing about bot optimization? Nothing, no answer. So I think the SEOs are missing the boat right now. But it's going to be to their detriment. So I think companies that put a wall around their content are going to be found. And I think one thing you can address it is you can if it's content that you don't want to be part of the conversation, don't put it on your website. And so I can't really totally answer that question unless I knew what their reasons were for not wanting their content to be part of the conversation. So, but let me just do this, and if there's more answer to that, after I do my 5 recommendations, I'll come back to that. Okay. And then I'm sorry, what was Louis? Louis was the other end of the spectrum. Louis' question?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly.
Go ahead, Louis.
What I was saying was, does ChatGPT, and I subscribe to ChatGPT 4, does it make recommendations or put together, its answer based on quality or quantity? So if 100 marketers are talking about inbound and social media and paid social ads, and 5 marketers are talking about the voice of the customer, and you ask it, what do customer, how do you reach customers? Is it going to say what's talked about the most, or is it really just a kind of regurgitating popular wisdom, or is it innovative and best of class?
Well, a great question, Louis. And so if you think about it, it is trying to emulate what the human brain would do. And the human brain works off of its base of knowledge, what you've been taught as a human, right? And so when you're asked a question as a human, if you're asked a question about inbound, you're going to have lots of data points that inform your opinion about inbound because it's been around and it's been a hype, and we've got a vendor that has hyped the hell out of it for 15 years now. And there's just an amazing amount of content on that. But if you, what was your other one? Voice of the customer or customer-led growth or one of those?
Well, yeah, I was saying that if voice of the customer doesn't get nearly as much mention and conversation around it, but maybe it's actually more effective.
Yes, and so here's what would the human brain do? The human brain has fewer data points. It's been taught less about it, less inputs over the years. And so it's still going to try to answer the question to the best of its ability. It's not going to be swayed by the inbound stuff. It's only going to be look at what it's been trained about voice of the customer, and it's going to do its best to answer the question. And so in effect, it's almost like SEO in that highly competitive keywords, you're going to have a lot harder of a time ranking. Same thing with high talked about topics. You're going to have a hard time being included in the messaging. Like you'll have a hard time being included in the messaging about inbound, but you can bet the heck that the HubSpot will be mentioned a lot around if somebody is asking you a question about inbound marketing, and how HubSpot content will be used to inform it. And then, but on the less ones, the ones that aren't searched less, it's still going to try to answer the question, but you're going to have a better opportunity of being mentioned in that conversation. And
Jeff, this is Michael here. I love where you're going about buyers wanting best practices of other companies. I would say that for some of them, it's very specific on who they want best practices from. I would say that some of them, if I look at retail, a company like Target will look at best practices from 5 or 6 other retailers, and that's it. And over the years, I've seen B2B marketing executives, sales executives sell themselves as the expert in what's happening in the market, in how things are being bought, how things are being implemented, and really they're just leveraging their current customer knowledge. They really are not proactively reaching out and finding out what the best practices are. They're really just kind of, selling whatever they've heard from their customers. And and there's a certain amount of BS and laziness associated with that, because they've actually never reached out to the best in class companies in the industry and found out how they're solving the problem. So do you think that kind of BS of positioning yourself as an expert in best in class companies and purchasing will go away with this? Do you think that will kind of be called out now?
Yeah, it will be. Michael, this is actually a good thing for your methodology.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So this is definitely a positive. So because if you look at the questions I was asking, you're absolutely right. I mean, I did a lot of research at Forrester with retailers, for example, and I know that the Gap wanted to know what Ann Taylor is doing, and so and they hired us to do that research. So this is going to be a big threat, to research firms that are doing that, because vendors now are going to have to do that. Now, the real challenge, though, is going to be how do you get the content that you create. If you're vendor 1 and you're writing content about how vendor 2 does something, right? You want to make sure that that's also attributed back to vendor 1's brand that you're writing the content for and doing the research for, and so that they get mentioned. Because it might be that they only mention, the Gap is doing the search and they only mention what Ann Taylor is doing without any reference back to that vendor that's helping them do it, right? So that will be the challenge. And I know we only have 10 minutes left. Let me go through my quick predictions and recommendations here. And I'm only focusing on some immediate recommendations. I could give 100 recommendations here. Some of them that are step 2 or 3, but in a crawl, walk, run, I'm starting with crawl here today, and maybe I'll come back in a year and talk about walking and running. But
hey, Jeff, don't put too much of a hard stop. I'm getting a lot of notes from people. They say if you want to spill over the time, we can do that.
Okay. All right. But so let's just keep going, because I know the next couple of slides are going to just generate a ton of questions. I just know it. So let me just keep going. Okay. So this is the company that shuts off AI. This is what you're doing. Okay. And the sales and marketing leaders who ignore the buy side of AI. This is what you're doing. Again, anybody know where this is from?
No, I'm trying to figure out what that is.
Well,
Game of Thrones.
I've heard it's Game of Thrones. Yeah, I'm not a big GOT fan, but the photo is relevant. All right, so here's some recommendations. 1, do your own voice of the buyer research and find out. My prediction here is insights on the voice of the buyer are way more important now in the world of AI than they ever were in the world of search because search was much more around keywords, and you could use, there was Ahrefs and all these other tools out there where you could see what people are searching on. It was a lot easier to get the voice of the buyer intent data that you could then translate into phrases. Now you're going to need to really get true. You want to know what the topics are that they're having conversations with AI bots about. And not only that, but you want to know when they're asking and why. Because if you know why they're asking, then you can generate the content that's going to address the why. If you remember, when I was running through the questions, I always asked why. When I was doing this research and asking them how they use AI, I would say, like, why? Why did you ask that question? What were you looking to understand? That's even more important than understanding the question.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, I
Yep.
was being somewhat, cheeky in the chat, but are you giving a eulogy for intent data?
Intent data takes on a new form. Okay?
That means yes.
Yes. Intent data, as we know it today, goes away. But intent data, this is a new definition of intent. Like, now your intent is to answer a question so that you can move to the next phase of your problem-solving process, and then hopefully eventually enter a buying process with a particular vendor or a set of vendors. But yeah, intent is defined very differently in this new world. And so find out what they are. And again, don't just interview people that have purchased your own solution, like, with win-loss. You need to find people that either, and you got to do it like recent buyers, right? Because they forget. And also before, the heavy use of ChatGPT began in the last 6 months, really. So don't, you got to go in recent buying processes, but find people that purchased from other solution providers or reached the very end and made no decision, right? Those are also very good insights to know, but you're going to learn what they were having conversations with about with the bots. Okay, so that's one. Another one is you need to finally get serious about customer voice content, right? And if you saw that big gap that I showed earlier about how 85% of what buyers want is best answered and addressed in the customer voice, and they want to hear that in the first person customer voice. But everything we're putting out there is in the company voice. All of our blog posts, all of our sales messaging, even our case studies, we write them in the third person in challenge solution result or problem solution result format. Those are going to have no effect in the future. I mean, even my existing buyer research over the last 10 years, nobody wants to read these problem solution result case studies. Stop writing them. I mean, you're just throwing money, and every company writes these. And I was joking, with Rob earlier. He and I both are going to fall on the sword and say, yeah, we've written hundreds of these over the years. They're not going to have any effect in the future world, just like they had no effect in the prior world. But you need in-depth stories about how customers are using your solution to achieve particular outcomes, and all the different aspects. And you're going to need your solution mentioned in that process of how they do it and how your company helped them through it. But you want it told in the first person, because this is one of my predictions, is that stories told in the first person are going to be much more credible. And just like the human brain is going to be put much more weight in retelling a story. Think about how we retell stories. Do we retell a story we heard from the vendor tell about their own customer? Or do we retell to our friends a story that we heard another friend tell about using a vendor? It's going to be the same thing. So when in doubt about how AI is going to work and be trained, think about how the human brain does it, because it's just going to continue to be refined to be more like the human brain. Okay, and it's got to, it doesn't really matter the format. It can be a Q&A format as long as the A is a really in-depth content, the question and answer. It can be a long story narrative format, and it can even be video, because video, especially when you transcribe it, but they're going to be better and better at handling the contents of video. Okay, and so you can both create great content for your buyers and at the same time the great content for the GPTs, because at the end of the day, they are trying to, when they answer a question from a buyer, they're trying to give the best answer possible and the most thorough answer possible. And so they're putting themselves, the chatbot is putting itself in the shoes of a buyer when that question is being answered, right? And it's trying to relate. So again, I also predict that whereas content, like there's another stat that 80% of content today on corporate websites is put there strictly for search engines, but it's not useful to a buyer. It's only the other 20% that's useful to the buyer. That 80% is not going to really matter. You're going to have to beef up the content that you're making useful to your buyer, because that's what the ChatGPT is going to care about, not how keyword rich it is. And so, just the whole idea of hiring a retired journalist to go write 800-word posts is not going to help you here. Okay, here now we're going to get a little meatier here. So you need to expand topical content to address what buyers are asking earlier in that problem-solving cycle. I've already talked about this one, so I won't spend too much time here. But you need to recognize what they're asking earlier in that problem-solving cycle before they enter the buying cycle, because that's where you want to be mentioned. Because they may never enter a buying cycle with you, or if you're never mentioned in the problem-solving cycle. So most content today put out there by sales and marketing people focuses on features and benefits. That's what we've been trained. Talk all about the features and talk all about the benefits, because that's what people are searching on. And you're absolutely right. That's what people are searching on. But that's
hey,
not
Jeff,
what the
my friend David was asking, customer voice content for many is now Reddit. Okay,
yeah.
which isn't very great. Comments?
It's now Reddit. It is now Reddit, and that's finding and search. Oh, here's what I think I should mention too. To answer your question about Reddit, and I'm going to make a note so I wrap it up here. The one thing I didn't mention is that when people, savvy buyers, when they're using ChatGPT or other bots to ask questions, oftentimes they will end it with this phrase: cite your sources. Okay? Remember this. Cite your sources. All right? When you're using ChatGPT, put that at the end. Okay? Especially if you're in problem-solving mode. Cite your sources. Because then the answer will give you the aggregated answer that this brain thinks is the best answer to your question. And then it's going to cite where it got it from. Okay, savvy buyers are going to do that more and more often. You guys have heard of prompt engineering? Well, prompt engineering for content generation is well established. I mean, there were people. What was November 22nd of 22? I think when ChatGPT was launched, the whole prompt engineering profession started that day. But now there's going to be a whole new set of prompt engineering for problem-solving people that are entering buying mode. Cite your sources is always one that you're going to want to put, because now you're going to see, okay, who informed this opinion? Just like you might ask a friend who's recommending, this restaurant, you're going to ask them, oh, did you go there? Okay, yeah, and why? What did you like about it? And was it handicapped accessible? Because I want to bring my mother. So yeah, cite your sources is a very important. And so getting back to Reddit, Reddit. It's not, and the other one is Quora, right? Sometimes that will be cited as a source, but Reddit, I mean, not everybody has a positive impression of Reddit as a source. And so if you see that this has been largely informed by Reddit, you might be questioning a little bit of it. But wouldn't it be awesome if one of the sources was your website? Okay, or another third-party site where your content has been referenced. So, all right, so topical content is key to this recommendation. It has to be on topic. It has to be highly relevant to those questions being asked. And especially if you want to have the top of the funnel activity happening in the new world, you need to go up way, way, way above your funnel, or just think of it, your funnel is going to now expand to start at the beginning of the problem-solving cycle, where you didn't have to worry about that before because you were just getting people clicking on your SERPs or getting people clicking on your demo requests to now enter the top of your funnel. Okay. Recommendation number 4, this is around your product content, which we have so much of on our website today. And this is especially important for e-commerce people, but you got to make sure that your product content is crystal clear, not only on what your product does, but how customers use it to do that, what it does, right? And so you need extensive content about there, not only on your website, especially if you're in an e-commerce company, you need to have that syndicated out to all the other e-commerce marketplaces, that incredibly rich content. So like the product information management systems are going to become more important in this era. But even if you're a B2B SaaS vendor, you need way more content on the product section of your website about how customers use it, right? Because the AI bots are going to be, they're looking at your content, and today what we do is we put all of our customer content in the form of PDF case studies that a lot of people put gates in front of, where it might just say, oh, here's a customer with a tile with a logo on it, and you click it and you have to fill out a form to get the case study. That's going to fail. But that's in its own tentacle of your website underneath the customers tab. No, you need to have this stories about how customers are using it. Their use cases content needs to be embedded on all around your website. So today our product content is optimized for SEO, and it's packed with keywords, speeds and feeds and attributes and things like that, because we're trying to match search queries and intent data 1.0, Rob, right? But now intent data 2.0 are the earlier questions about what buyers are asking the bots earlier. So now you need to create way more detail about what your product does and how it's used by your customers. And if assuming you have customer permission, talk about how that customer did that, and talk about it in the context of, they used our product name XYZ to do this, and this was the process they went through. They did this, they did this, they did this. But even better, take my earlier recommendation and don't have you saying they. The content should be I, me, we, right? So it should be in the customer's first person voice. We used product X to do this. The process went like this. This is the problems we hit. This is what went well. This is how we drove adoption. They need to be way in-depth stories told in the first person, because that's what the AI mimicking the human brain is going to think of as very valuable stories that it wants to recount when people ask questions about that topic. Okay, and then let me just go on to the last one. Is it's going to be more important than ever to get your content on not just on your site, but on third-party sites. Okay, so here for bots to include your company and product in the conversation, your company and product must be discussed on many sites, not just your own. And so this might have been, I don't know if it was Will's question earlier or about the quantity versus quality, but yes, the answer is yes. Quality and quantity count. And so you need to be part of the discussion that's going on, not only on your website, but on other websites. And so you need to get your content out there. Here's my prediction, and I might be, pissing off a few friends here, but including my former colleagues, but I believe that peer review sites, I believe that analyst magic quadrants and waves, and I believe that even analyst inquiries are going to become obsolete or replaced by a whole new breed of practitioner experience types websites. And I'm actually working on one myself. If anybody, voice advice, this is what we're morphing into. I'm practicing what I preach here and doing a lot of analysis right now on how to put vendor content in their customer's voice on a website that is going to be in a format that's very friendly to bots. And so ping me if anybody wants to be part of that research and like an early adopter of what that's like. But again, that's think about peer review sites today. They average 5 questions per review, and they average less than 15 words per answer. That's not rich enough. Think about it. You're not going to be able to read a peer review site and then, as a human, have a very highly informed opinion of a particular vendor by reading a bunch of their reviews. You might have a sentiment, but you're not going to be able to give specific advice on how you can best use that product to achieve success. Just from reading that, it's going to have to be way more in depth. Okay, so those are my recommendations. Again, this is just the surface, right? This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be so much more we're going to need to do. This whole area is changing every day. You need to stay on top of it, but you need to start preparing now and proactively putting, whether it's for your clients or whether for your own companies, start to make sure that your marketing and sales leadership and your executive team leadership is aware that buyer behavior is shifting to bots, and that you need to now start to put strategies together. And it's going to impact everything. It's going to impact the skill sets that you hire. It's going to impact how you organize your teams. And it's going to impact the type of content you create. It's going to impact how you segment your markets, even the type of sales skills you need. Because think about it, your sales reps are now, today they just need to continue the dialogue that was started in your challenge, solution, result case studies and things like that. Now they're going to need to be able to continue the conversation that was started in the bot. And if even your salespeople are going to need to be familiar with what those conversations are, so they know what mindset their buyers are coming into their first call with. All right. Hopefully, did that blow people's mind?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Jeff, do you want to? I've got a question that ties into that. John Russo, I'm not sure if you're still here. Deferred one of your questions. I think it ties into what Jeff just said regarding Battery Ventures. Just came out with a pretty sweeping AI analysis suggesting marketing headcount would be cut in half with no end date due to AI, the most aggressive any GTM function. And he also said GTM costs are out of whack everywhere. RE AI headcount, it feels like SDRs would be the greatest risk, followed by customer experience, followed by marketing. What's your reaction?
All right,
John, did I capture that right?
Yeah, you captured it right. And I guess my concern there is a CEO reads this report and says, oh, we're going to hack marketing by 50% because all my peers are doing it. And there was no data, no date. I did reach back to Battery. So if there's anybody here from Battery or knows people from Battery, I did make an effort and I didn't hear much. I'm slaying a lot of other agency dragons around reporting and ABX that I'm not going to go continue to chase down Battery, but it's a legit question. Like, where does AI impact the go-to-market function the most? And that's why I came up with, I think it's more on the CX side. I think it's more on the SDRs for sure. So I think it's SDR, CX, then us in marketing. And I think AEs are probably unscathed or very little impact on the AE. But what's your read on it?
And John, when you say CX, do you mean like CSMs?
Yeah, exactly. CSMs, and because now you can have a bot, right? Like you could put a bot. Right. I mean, is it the best? No. Is it the best experience? But I use Sybil, for example, on a lot of my recordings. And when I go into their help, everything's answered via a bot. And I get 90% of the answers correct. So do you need CS? Do you need a junior person who doesn't know the business, who's talking to a senior leader about the product? I don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And John, knowing you, I'm sure you probably didn't go to Inbound. You were probably at Dreamforce back in September, right?
Or something. Yeah. I don't remember.
Or something. Okay. Yeah. So, but anyway, one of the things the best thing I saw at Inbound this year was just a quote from Dharmesh's keynote, where he said that AI will not replace people. AI will replace people who don't embrace AI. Right. So if you think about that again, I didn't want to plagiarize him, but that stuck with me. And I believe it is true. I mean, but SDRs, yeah, I mean, they're going to be very vulnerable in this new world unless they, in their leadership, needs to embrace AR, right? The people that are leading the SDR team, they might be able to get by with fewer SDRs because you're going to be making few phone calls. But if your company has taken a lot of these recommendations that I put out there, you're still going to need some SDRs to qualify, but they're going to be qualifying earlier in the process, and they're going to perhaps be planting seeds. Like an SDR I think they're going to shift from lead qualification which is how we use them today, because we're just trying to have a lower cost resource so we're not wasting our AEs time on low quality leads, because we only want AEs talking to people that have BANT, right? I think BANT goes away in this new world, because I think we're going to want SDRs identifying people earlier in their problem solving cycle when they're asking questions of the bot about what does the company need to have in place before they can start tackling this issue, those types of things. If your content is now being found and you've had an inbound inquiry, like where somebody now asked to cite sources and saw like one of your case studies and downloaded or something or reached out, now that SDR can now start to ask not just BANT questions, but more questions about, how are you considering solving this problem now? Are you considering doing it by hiring an employee, maybe engaging a consulting firm, or maybe buying some technology? Remember, at that early stage, they don't even know the approach they're going to use to solving a problem. And think about when you guys, as practicing VPs of marketing or VPs of sales, when you have a problem, very early on, you're thinking, do we solve this problem by hiring somebody? Do we bring in a consultant? Do we buy technology? Do we just try to muddle through it? And so that's when you want to, so SDRs are going to have to be retrained to be having those conversations earlier. I think the CSMs, they're already the ratio between CSM, the like customer to CSM has been going, I guess that ratio goes up, right? It used to be maybe, in an enterprise software company, 20-1. Now it's like 50-1. And so they're already under pressure. More and more companies on the CSM front are trying to digitize the experience for all but their largest enterprise customers. And I think those that embrace bots are definitely going to be able to digitize that experience quite a bit. But then also, like I work with a lot of customers with Slap 5, where we're capturing customer voice specifically from customers sharing best practices and tips and techniques for adopting and expanding, and then pushing that content out to the CSM team to give them the air cover that they need. I absolutely do think marketing on the content generation side, again, that's the side the whole world has gone down. I think definitely on the content generation side, marketing is going to take a hit there. The content shops are going to, you won't need as many people writing that content. However, I do think when it comes, I think it's going to be quality over quantity. And so I think rather than generating 50, 800-word blog posts a month that are just filled with these keywords which you can give to any level of skill set, I think now you're going to need a more senior level person who really understands the industry, maybe been in the industry 20 or 30 years, who can actually interview your customers and perhaps generate the first person ghost written stories about your customers and what they can do, and how they've used your solution, what those use cases are. And so again, I'm not looking at it as totally dire, but this, just like the internet changed everything, just like Web 2.0 changed everything, this is changing everything. It's going to change the skill sets that people need. And I think those that reinvent themselves with the knowledge of how buyers are using it, how their existing customers are using it, how they want to use it, are going to need to adapt. And
Jeff,
and I work with a lot of the call center vendors that in the customer success software vendors. They're all racing to get chatbots, to release their chatbots and improve their chatbots for customers. Everybody's doing something there. And in fact, I'll just give you a little bit of hint too from both my work. My work. I write a ton of case studies and in the first person, and do a lot of customer interviews now for my clients. And the first person, it's way more important now that that you have a seasoned person doing this, because especially when it comes to AI, one of the biggest objections, actually, and before I say that, when you're generating customer stories now that you want to have in order to create the type of content that is going to be found by and train the language models, they need to be very in-depth, and they also need to be very specific to the they can't just be the happy day scenario. And in most stories, they have a story arc like this, right? It goes like this: the customer was in a world of hurt. We were their knight in shining armor, and now they're living happily ever after. That's what every case study. But that's not gonna. The bots are not gonna like that. They're gonna want to hear the real meat of it, which means you need to find out before you even sick a writer or an interviewer on doing this. You need to find out what are the biggest questions, fears, and doubts that your buyers have. And that's buyers, new logo buyers, as well as existing customers when they have their buying hat on, deciding whether to expand with you or buy more. You need to find out what those questions, fears, and doubts are, and then make sure that the stories you're telling are knocking those down, because that's what's going to make them relevant. They're not relevant if it's just, we were in the challenge, solution, result format, even with more detail around the challenge, solution, result. That's not going to be relevant to the topics that are being discussed in these conversations that are going on. And so that's going to take a different skill set. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey,
sorry.
Jeff, this is spot on. We are at time. I know some folks are going to have to jump off on other calls, and I'm going to just turn over to Pam in a moment. But I want to say on behalf of everybody, this is uncomfortable, okay, by design. Critical topic, and we'll be revisiting this. And I know you're going to have a pretty active voice out in the marketplace, Jeff. And for folks whose questions we couldn't answer, by all means, reach out directly to Jeff. He gets back. He knows what he's talking about. And this has been fantastic. So, Jeff, on behalf of everybody, I want to say thank you. I'm going to shut off the recording in just a second. I'm going to turn it over to Pam. We're dovetailing into the next session is actually pretty important as well, because everything that Jeff mentioned is critically important, but we're dealing with another factor. So, Pam, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rob. Let me just add my appreciation and thanks for Jeff for joining us and giving us these insights, and also for the conversations and questions from everybody. It's always a great SAMI session when it leaves your mind buzzing and thinking about how you can apply this today. So as we mentioned, we've got some 2024 sessions in the works. If there is a topic or a speaker you'd like us to include, and I think we got a hint of one idea on today's call, please reach out to us. But our next session is scheduled for February 15th. And it's a really nice follow-on today because it's about buyer behavior. And that session is called Overcoming Customer Indecision, the Jolt Effect. And we're going to have Ted McKenna. He's the co-author of the best-selling book by the same name, The Jolt Effect. And in this book, Ted McKenna and his co-author, Matt Dixon, you might be familiar with Matt Dixon. He's the author of the Challenger sale from 10, 12 years ago. And they've now brought their analysis and research to this growing problem of customer indecision, right? You don't lose to the competitor, you lose to do nothing. And they've got a really good approach to turn that conventional wisdom on its head. So Ted is going to be here on February 15th. We're going to officially announce, for those of you who are still here, I've got a link to the meetup session. Please do sign up for the session, because then you get all the alerts with the Zoom. We had a few people today who are members of SAMI but hadn't signed up for this session. If you sign up for the session, you'll get all the alerts, all the reminders to come. So please join us on February 15th. Nice follow-on to what Jeff gave us today. Rob, I'll hand it back to you for any final comments.
Okay, fantastic. And I think, Pam, you covered it. Jeff, big thanks. Thanks for the inspiration in the marketing community. And we got some work ahead of us. I'm not going to share. I'm going to sleep well tonight, but that's the opportunity. All right. I want to thank everybody for taking their time out, and this recording will be available. Thanks, everyone.